Meeting. Thank you for being here, for the members especially. Again, I'll continue to notice these as a council meeting would be noticed. I believe that even though I'm not a quorum of the public body and I'm just one, the executive branch, if the executive branch is giving you information, I believe both the open meetings law and common sense dictates if you're going to show up and you are in a quorum, which you're not today, but if you are, that we should notice it the same way. I'm also adding to make sure that we notice in multiple means the mayor's briefing as well. I'm going to highlight some differences in the mayor's briefing versus a council meeting today. Without going into yesterday, which I was present to see, despite the continued assertion that somehow I'm not here, which is comical at times, without commenting on what the substance of the meeting was about, the manner in which it was held and conducted was, in a word, atrocious. And it is not enough or easy to say this, especially to the council members here, who we try to spend a lot of time as your administration both offering and looking at the city as the city. So there are some council persons who will be asked a question and say, oh, that's the city, as though the council person is not an elected part of the city, which has always been a little bizarre to me, but if you look at it in the context of either sloughing off or pitting folks against each other, then maybe it makes sense. It doesn't to me. My criticism today, which again, I don't like to give because it's one elected official to others, and it could create resentment with some of you toward me that we certainly don't need more of with the administration and the council, but I do want to caution all of you, including the presiding officer, Mr. Villard, whom I consider someone trying to do this right and having to live through some tough stuff. It is a societal change in how this is happening. It is born out from both a response to COVID, a response to frustration by people, a response to national pressures, a response to social media and what that opens in terms of what people may be willing to say, a loss of some of those norms of decorum that we have. However, to the extent that we, as a city, and I'm including myself in the we, to be magnanimous and to not try to make a separation, but there is a very big misconception out there that the mayor is part of the council. I am not part of the council. This is the executive branch. We are a mayor-council system. The council is the legislative branch. There may be other cities and places that are Larson Act or do it a different way, in which you see an elected mayor who is both the executive but sits on that council as the presiding officer. We're not. I'm not a member of the council. The only reason that there's a table built this way with the administration sign is it was designed to have a place for people to sit so they could address the council when called upon. I am technically a guest of the city council. And unlike some city charters, and in the 70s, as Mr. Gist well knows, when these model charters were adopted, they all look very similar. There was a model charter movement for home rule charters of a mayor-council system like ours. They had models for council manager systems, etc. And you can look them up and they look very similar, but each is a little different. If you compare ours to Monroe, if you compare others, there's some tweaks in all of them that are slightly different. They're largely the same, many of them. In some cities, there is a provision within the charter that the mayor has the right to speak at every meeting. There is a right to then address the council. Our charter does not contain that provision. In fact, it's in a section that is almost identical to ours in some cities with that one addition. We're different. If you notice, especially if I sense formality is needed, which sometimes you do here in fact, I'll tell you an interesting one that I just saw. In Lafayette, they don't follow formality on their council until 2 members demand Robert's rules be followed, and then they move into it, which is very interesting. In other words, without a vote, they can be as informal as their consolidated government wants to be until the moment that someone senses they need to be formal, and if 2 people ask, not through a vote, not a motion, just 2 people raise their hand and say, Robert's rules, they must then follow the formalities. And I sort of get it. I used this analogy a few weeks ago about something else, but when people split up, unfortunately, they don't get along, they may be trading the child at Walmart parking lot or whatever they do, and the judge will say, as long as you're getting along, parents, you can do whatever you want to do, but the minute you don't, you better follow what's in this judgment. You better default to the written judgment. And that's how Lafayette handles it. You can, as long as y'all want to be informal and run your meeting accordingly, have at it. But if 2 people want formality, you get it. Charters are the organic law of the city, ladies and gentlemen, meaning that the charter is likened to and precisely functions as for the city a constitution. Your ordinances, every one of them that you pass, is subject to the charter. It is the governing document, not the ordinance. The ordinance must either comply with a power given by the charter, be okayed by it, or comply with some state law that the charter can't supersede. Interestingly enough, our legislature is sometimes not so aware of this. I know Mr. Guest is. When these model charters came out, and our 74 Constitution was adopted, the Home Rule Charter is protected by the state constitution, that as to the function, powers, and organization of the city, the charter prevails over a legislative enactment. I'm going to say that again. As to organizational function, structure, lots of things that used to have to do with voting, as Trey knows, it gets unclear now with new voting laws that seek to uniform all voting in the state, which makes sense, federal things, etc. The charter is the final word on organization and structure of the city, not a legislative enactment. So if the legislature adopts a law that tried to affect vacancy or different rules you have in the charter, it doesn't prevail. Your charter prevails. They can pass the law, and if someone challenges it, it would be held unconstitutional because your charter is the Constitution for a home rule city. Lots of cities are under Larson Act, they're not under home rule. Statutes get passed, whole schemes, if you will, that address those things, and it changes over time. So voting, as you might imagine, has become, so here's the exception, and then we'll come to voting. Laws of general applicability passed by the state, the criminal laws in Title 14, etc., general applicability passed by the state are there. So our charter can't, for example, give the city council jurisdiction to be a court and hear felony trials because the state law doesn't allow it. There's a host of provisions that don't allow that. But this body is quasi-judicial too. It can hear certain things from zoning and other things, as all of you know, and it can follow rules of procedure, and they're written and should be there. In fact, I saw one put on the board last night that had nothing to do with last night, just citing a rule on technical code revision and the public comment rules under technical code provisions as though those are the same rules for all other public comment. You notice that, Mr. Gibbs? That was incorrect, wasn't it?
Right.
Absolutely incorrect. But people are coming into your meetings telling you what the law is and how to run your meetings. And so laws of general applicability, et cetera, are exceptions and trump our charter, but not laws that have to, not things that have to do with the charter and its construction and how we organize our city, how you are elected, how many council members they are, the powers of distribution between the two branches, the executive and legislative branch. Those are all driven by the charter. The legislature can't change that. We've had some crazy interesting ones. We have a $7,500 limit with certain things with the state that the state has now passed for everyone else. That's over $100,000 now to do certain products. How much? 200.
270.
Oh, 270? So, wow. All right, so we're $7,500. That slows down a lot of work. That was passed in the 70s as a big limit for this. But other cities in their charters made it where it follows the state law. We don't and didn't. That's a horrible problem for us. My criticism is you can't enforce rules of play in this room if it's always a moving target. The target here being a properly run meeting. If a properly run meeting is a target goal, you can't run it if it changes all the time. You can't run it if you're debating in your public comment period. Public comment is not a debate. Public comment is just what the two words say, public comment. It can be structured in a number of ways. And it can be structured in a number of ways to ensure that content of free speech is robust and allowed to say things you may not want to hear, but allowed. But what is happening in each of your meetings, roughly, progressively too, by the way, progressively, like a progressive illness, is they're getting more and more untethered from germaneness and the points that need to be made. They're becoming hyper-political. This building is political at all moments, and your meetings are political policy choices and political in all moments. Yet that is a different term than being political overtly, as in someone taking the mic and running for office, using the public setting to run for office, declaring office in this room, using Channel 4, a public asset, to promote for free what they would have to pay for if they were to go buy ads, etc. Proselytizing politics in the room, etc., coming in here and passing out political documents, etc. Those are not permissible in this chamber, at least during meetings. Now, can the council host a political debate with candidates running if all are given equal access and there are rules of engagement, etc., and it's even-handedly applied? That's different. It seems to me that what you most want is somehow to balance the robustness of content-free implications on free speech, meaning no regulation of content to the max you can have it, along with a time, place, and manner component that allows that content to be robust in a manner that serves people. So while we may never agree on what someone says or even the way they say it, time, place, and manner does allow certain things not to occur. For example, obscene things. Or things that are so lacking in decorum that you can't conduct the public business of the meeting by which and for which you were elected to do. And your meetings are falling closely into that at this point. I can't say if last night was the worst I've seen of a lack of decorum, but I can't blame citizens for being so upset. So here's the part you're not going to like me saying to you. If you have a lack of cohesive, uniform, even-handedly applied rules for decorum, or they're a change or they're a moving target, that frustrates people. And you will see that manifested in the people that are here. And that frustration, you may say, comes from, well, they didn't know this fact, or this person didn't know this, or this person is here specifically, politically, to interrupt your meeting. You can have that whole gamut of activity occur. But if you have uniform rules and they're applied even-handedly, you can deal with all of those situations. You don't, and you're not. You have some rules. They're not the best written in the ordinances. There's probably some ambiguities. But even if you followed every meeting your own rules that you adopted long ago, not your council, not this council, those rules have been in place for decades. Even if you followed those, you'd be better off. But you're not. I saw earlier today a Rapides Journal article about, I think it had a comment dropped in there about the mayor can't come quick enough with ideas on public comment. So I want to thank them for throwing me in this briar patch. Apparently, some of you said, no, you did it to yourself at your last briefing. You talked about public comment rules, and I did. I was talking about water, which I'm about to come to on my agenda for today. But I do have some ideas about public comment. I'm in a catch-22. If I do what I know we can do, I can do personally to help, and we can do as a staff to give you rules, then you're going to be criticized that the mayor's controlling your council meeting, when I'm not at all. I'm having a staff of people with some subject matter expertise and ability go out and research through lawyers what your rules should be. I'm not happy with legal right now. And that hurts to say, but I just saw two of my legal officers do this. But I'm not happy with the lack of legal stepping in to say when things are not appropriate, out of control, not germane, et cetera. And I know that you default most of the time as a council into just let it all come in and help. And somehow you see that as helping. If we just let everything in, no one can fault us. And I'd almost 90% of the time agree with that. Sometimes judges do that too, Trey, right? They just say, let it all in the record. I'm not going to deal with all these objections. Let it all in. We'll sort it out later. The problem with it in your meeting is by doing that, some real business gets neglected. And some really important thoughts aren't said because people are terrified to talk because it's so uncomfortable, so palpably stressed in the room. And some people who are in a district, in an area that needs help with water or something else, don't come forward, but someone who doesn't even live in the city takes up your whole meeting. Can you disallow a Coloradan from coming to your meeting and talking if they sign up and do things right? Nope. Can you ask to hear people with a direct interest first and get to the Coloradan last? Yep. But you're not getting that advice from your legal department. And I'm stressing that you need advice on how to stack these things to make your meetings better. I am absolutely willing to help. I am absolutely concerned that no matter what we do to help, we will then hurt you, the whole council. Not just the folks in the room today, but all the council members. Because it looks as though something is happening that really is quite simple. You can look at the Louisiana legislature, different type of body, two houses, different from you, but there are things to draw from what they do right, especially in the committee aspect, that this body used to do. Mr. Fowler is the member on here that knows that they used to separate business committee work from voting on the general matters work. Police jury still does. Most bodies still do some form of that, so that you have the biggest part of robust debate in one section and the action items voted on in another. Or the public comment comes at committee debate time, and at the final time, it's council members to council members. All of this will be seen as someone who doesn't want cohesiveness as somehow controlling speech. It's not. In fact, it is more robust because you allow full public comment at an appropriate time to cover any gamut of issues. You cut down on germaneness arguments. You open things up to more general arguments, but when you're there to conduct your final business, you do business. I'm going way beyond what I wanted to tell you because I think it actually hurts. Because I think, unfortunately, in the society we have right now, this common sense that I'm given, and it is only that, trickled with some law here and there, doesn't matter as much to people as it used to. I'm sorry for that. That's a shame. And while I don't want to take the Rapides Journal up on exactly how they put what I maybe unfortunately said and did to myself, called the airstrike in on myself last week, because they seemed to, I did go back and look, and I think I did suggest it. I will say this. You need to have methods of public comment. It does not include not having rules and some folks talk in 1 minute, some 3, and some 45. This is inviting an atmosphere that there aren't rules. It actually supports citizens feeling like things are different. It can make someone feel like one person gets something that another person doesn't. It supports all of that in a way I do not believe you guys intend. But y'all have been one way or another, especially two of you I'm looking at, in the world of perception is reality because you've been in marketing your whole lives. And that is a problem, whether you like it or not. And more so today than any time in the history of this country and maybe world. So, long ago, this is not new, there's probably been some tweaks since coming back. We had a policy and we posted outside, and we're going to do it again, and if it gets taken down, we'll put it on websites and everything else. We have a policy for use of Channel 4. So someone says, I want to plug my computer in, and there's a whole fight about that. I know it happened to happen last night. It's not the first time. I heard comments, there's just so much not factually accurate, but forget last night's. It is not up to someone to plug your system into a city system in today's time without rules, without knowing what your equipment's going to be, without knowing if what you're going to place is defamatory, states things that invade privacy of employees, all of those things. Any other body has a simple set of rules that if you're going to use a presentation and you would like the citizens to see it, you submit it at a certain time ahead, usually 48 hours. It could be less depending on emergencies, but there's a rule, and someone not connected makes a policy decision, it follows it. And it's even better if you just have a set of rules that anyone can go see. What is the type of stuff that's not allowed on Channel 4? We've had this published for years. I don't know what happened, but I dusted it off and dragged it back out. There's a whole policy here for your Channel 4 use. I'm going to leave it with you today to decide. We're going to follow it in my briefings to the letter. I suggest that you follow it in yours. While you do control the actions in this space, and you do, by ordinance, you've declared that space to be yours, by, Trey, the convention of construing the charter as a constitution, it would be a separation of powers, whether it was written in the charter or not, that it would be your space to control, to decide who speaks. Your rules are yours, not the bears. I don't have any say over the rules of how you conduct your business. But only I have the absolute duty to control the safety of everyone in this building, including in your meetings, at all times. That is not taken away if you choose to allow meetings to fall into a situation of danger. And we're going to have a talk about what those lines are, but enough is enough. It shouldn't take when that happens for you to say, man, maybe we should have done it differently. That's not how life works. You plan ahead. I would suggest you adopt these. They're fair. They come from years of research on government access channels and what to use and how to do it. My mayor briefing stuff is in there. You're more than welcome to look at it. It's been our rule for a long time. I also will give back to you, you get it on any time we do a report, our policy statement. We recognize the approach to releasing information is vital to citizens that affect the health, welfare, and safety of our employees and citizens. We adopt this policy in that spirit and secure this environment. We want to facilitate discussions on agendas. We want them to be robust. This goes into how I treat answering your questions for committee. So there's a policy on how to handle your committee responses, how to handle these briefings. That's this short one-page one. There's a two-page one we're going to post about Channel 4. I'm going to enforce the Channel 4 one up and until when you decide you don't want it for your meetings. I'm not getting in that battle. It's your meeting. I'll just say when something happens, it'll be on the council for not adopting and following a uniform policy. Your own notice, guys. This isn't getting better. You need to take it seriously. This is important. I have thoughts about what you should do for public comment. It's very different from what I do. So I would not be required to have public comment in a mayor's briefing. But I intend to. I did it years ago. Probably a lot of the staff says, no, that's crazy. You're asking for something you don't have to do. What I don't do is at a mayor's briefing where there are citizens who want to see, hear, and understand things at home. As the elected mayor, I can't make the mayor's briefing about what someone else wants to make their own briefing. Run for office, be elected, and do those things. But I do think public comment's important. And in fact, I think it should inform some of the things I brief on, right? It could be informative for you. Council, this person brought this up. They filled out a form. I not only talked about it in my briefing, you ought to put it on your agenda. And so there's a form that's been created that I want to show you. Yours would not look the same if you choose to adopt a card form, but you need to. In fact, I'm going to be clear. I hate doing this because it brings the lawyer out, and I'm not your lawyer. I'm not the city's lawyer. I'm the mayor. I can't act as the lawyer for the city, but I happen to be a lawyer, and regardless of this being a legal opinion, it's common sense. You need to have a policy on this for our liability reasons as a city. We need to have a policy. It will cut down and diffuse some of what's happening if it's followed uniformly. It won't be fun for someone who doesn't want a policy, and it won't be fun for someone who actually thrives on there being battles in here. But you can't conduct your duty-bound elected process that you were elected to do if you don't have rules. I want to say it again. Time, place, and manner is subject to rules. Content is largely not. No one is asking for you to have any impingement on the content of what someone says. You have an absolute right, and I suggest duty, to regulate time, place, and manner so that two things happen. There isn't a lack of decorum, which is for what reason? So that people who want to talk and bring good ideas have a safe space too. We've all learned this in school, right? If you have one student that makes it impossible for all kids to learn in the class, somebody has to make a decision about that. And our society has turned a lot toward making sure we're always creating the environment for problems with kids, which we do have had and do now, does not so impinge that no one can go and learn in the environment that they're there to do. This is the same. We've got to have an environment that works for everybody. So we recognize that importance. The same policy recreated here that you've seen in the other two, roughly. It's very simple. Give us your name, give us your address, give us your council district if you know it. Give us a special contact if you want to. If you want to give me an email, give it to me. If you want to give me your cell number, give it to me. Understand that what you do here becomes a public record. That might need to be corrected on our form to warn people of that. But you give what you want. But if you're here to be on the public record, you're here to be on the public record. If you want to say who you are, show your face, do whatever, you're already on the public record. Give us the topic. Let's talk about what topics are not topics. A topic should be a matter that the requester wishes the mayor to address regarding a proposed policy, an existing policy, so proposing a new one, dealing with an existing one, changing something that you want to change, seeking legislation. You could come to the briefing, submit this. If you come in and submit it while I'm talking to whomever's going to pick them up, you might not get it done that day. But if I have time and it's handed to me and I read it and it's simple, I'll deal with it that day. If not, it'll be at the next time. Or I may see that it's so important, it just needs to go straight to the council. It's worthy of legislation. We'll make a recommendation that you do it. But I'm going to get as much information as I can for you and for the administration. Look, anything's fair game for me. Anything on the policy, philosophy, or positions that you think the administration has taken are fair game. Here are things that you wouldn't submit it for. And I know we're going to get a bunch that do by accident. It's okay. I imagine there's going to be a bunch of public record request type things in here. That's a public records request. If it's clearly one for a document, I'll send it to legal and they'll treat it as a public records request. But that's not what this form is for. There's already a process for that. You can do it online. It's easy. Don't waste this form for that, but we're going to treat it as one if we get one. If it's about the mayor attending an event, the staff attending an event, hosting a new event, a community partnership request form, Ms. Corley, any of those, not this form. Don't put it on there because it's not going to get processed because that's not what the form is for. It's not for partnering other events or anything else. It's for legislation and things that happen here, or a policy change, or the code is wrong, or I have a utilities question. Any of those things can be on here. Understand that not everything that you write on here can I answer. If you say, I heard Jimmy Jack was fired because of this, you're not going to get an answer because that is a professional discretion matter that I've defined here for you that I can't answer. We're not allowed to answer it. There's been plenty of times people post things who've lost jobs at the city and elsewhere where I'm sure their employer, including the city, would love to say the whole story, right? We can't. So understand that. You may read it, it may make social media, it doesn't make it true. Importantly, if you submit the form by signing the form, you're saying it's true and correct to the best of your knowledge, and you're saying you're not intending to defame, violate the privacy of anybody unlawfully, and understand scandalous, defamatory, or untruthful comments may be ignored. So if you're going to use the form to write something incendiary or silly that's not really addressing something, okay, I get it, fine. You'll make a public record of that and it'll be there. But you're going to have to place a name and an address for us to consider it because we've got to have a way to deal with it. This is going to go online. This will be out to be passed out in front of the briefings. We'll try to keep them at all times replenished outside so people can fill them out at all times. They can be turned in to the ladies here in the front and will get up and be answered. There may be some that make this briefing by me because they're that important. There may be some where we just contact the person because we see something important, but it's just a direct contact to a constituent. If this is how we're going to handle the briefing side, you need a different form than that. We've got great ideas of what that form should be, but the council's got to ask. The council has to ask. That you want to look at the rules, you want recommendations. I will hire a third party if that's what you want. So it's not the administration. We'll do it any way you want. Any way you want. But I don't think that just Mr. Gist, Mr. Goins, and the current legal staff that I would either approve or want that. I know what people are going to say, well, that's your lawyers. Why wouldn't they do it? They'll do it if that's what you ask for the staff to do it, then we'll all do it. We'll show you the sources and why. But if you want a third party, then it's not a mixed bag. Then get a third party and do it that way. I can't stress enough that this is almost emergent, the need at which and speed at which you need to do it. Now, before I got on my agenda, another personal privilege of this. You have a lot of former council persons who lost an election or whatever that are taking over meetings in the absence of being an elected council person. That's okay. They're citizens and they have the right and probably have a strong opinion about things. That's why they ran for office in the first place. But it borderlines when someone gives a speech about what they are or not doing that doesn't hasten anything on your agenda. Yesterday you had a speech that started off with, "This isn't demagoguery." Does everybody recall that? This is not demagoguery. I'm going to give you a hint in life about politics. When a speaker starts off with what it's not, that's what it is. Hamlet Act 3. The lady doth protest too much, methinks, right? So when someone starts off with what it's not, that's what it is. And when someone starts off their speech with "this isn't demagoguery" and then proceeds to give the definition of demagoguery, It is what it is. Demagoguery is defined as the political activity or practice that seeks support by appealing to the desires and prejudices of people rather than rational argument. So a good sign you say you're not doing it is that you are. And here's a better one. When the very thing you're saying is unrelated to the matters and you throw in a comment about utilities, et cetera, that has nothing to do with the matters. So you throw in a comment regarding a utility that's a low-cost utility to justify an ill-informed vote you took years before when you were on the council. That's demagoguery. If I didn't have time, I could have made a schema of the word demagoguery and could have graphed it out, the root and everything, and you'd see this is essentially a quintessential version of demagoguery. The utility that those who chose to vote for, with its monthly charges, with its payoff amortized schedule, its all-in cost, was the least cost best option against all other of the 10 to 20 options reviewed. It is in a CURE report. It is open to the public. I gave the whole report to some citizens a few weeks ago. CURE certified it with professionals as the best option. It's now been certified in our resource planning. Again, it remains the best option. So a demagogue, the noun for those who practice demagoguery, who comes in and tells you with demagoguery what something is, it's nothing to do with your council, have the debate. Where is it cheaper? So if the demagogue wanted CLECO to provide all your power at that time, it wasn't the best option. I don't know why you would have done it. But the idea that the utility keeps getting thrown into every talk as though it's the bad guy is destroying the council's ability to fund future projects, just like the rule comments I've been giving you about having proper rules. So you may say, well, you're just being mean. You're doing the demagoguery thing to make your own demagoguery point. No, not at all. I'm making this point. Get facts. It's such an easy thing to compare the cost of the utility all in versus all of your competitors. So why does someone get to take the mic and say that? They do. That's free speech. That's the First Amendment. But you have the right to go, whoa, before you leave, can you prove it? You're going to get a different answer. You're going to get a different answer. So why bring that up today? Well, on our agenda, we're talking about utilities and we're talking about infrastructure again. I bring it up today because my worst fear has been confirmed. The city of Alexandria's utility system is going to be derated substantially. It's going to be derated for the actions taken prior to this administration, just like I warned you. Didn't want to make it about that? It is. And it's going to list them out by third parties who have nothing to do with me or what I'm trying to do or influence or demagoguery at all. They're rating agencies. They're sort of big organizations. You got Moody's, S&P. These are not folks that are living here in Alexandria subject to your local politics. And the decisions that led to it were management decisions. Clear decisions straight out of the FAQ we gave you for Restore. And the main one is, what do you think? What do you think a rating agency that looks at your utility might consider a bad practice? Collections. One of several. And you continue to have people come and demagogue at your meeting and throw that in. Ladies and gentlemen at home, in the public, and all of you in here, including my own staff, who I don't know, I think all of you know this. The mayor has no control over the utility collection side, cost, whatever. It is generated in a form by computer. It kicks out the last in line and goes forward. I do not pick who is cut off. One of the persons who spoke, again, totally untruthfully, said the mayor keeps cutting me off. I don't cut off anybody. The process cuts off, but it's your process. You're the rate maker. Let's put this one to bed, folks at home. Don't say, unless you just want to demagogue or be untruthful, the mayor is controlling utility costs. I don't control it. The council does. You want to ask the council to lower your rates? Come get the council to lower your rates. It's not a choice of the mayor to raise or lower your rates. Only the council can do it. Only the council can do it. So council, it's now on you. You failed to ever point that out to the public, that it's not the mayor. You let us be blamed over and over, years and years. Now it's come home to roost. We try to protect all, go out, point out these problems. We haven't been protected. We've been demagogued and blamed, in many cases by former council members who should know better. So lower your rates. Read the D-rate report first. Read it. And ask yourself what thing you have, if it's the lowest cost utility comparatively in the whole region, where are you going with this? You got to make some decisions about it. I don't envy that, but it's hard to be a part of the making it better, doing the best practice, getting CURE together, doing all those things when no one defends the position that the city administration has no choice in lowering utilities, in raising utilities, and in who has to pay. All we can do is enforce your ordinance or its malfeasance. And I don't enforce in terms of who has to pay. An algorithm that says who's the furthest out is going to get hit with that. There's only one time I can think that in the last 2 years I had to address whether someone should be cut off or not a residential. Right? I've had to do a couple of commercials because they affected a nursing home or something huge where I have to get involved because I have to work with the state and balance interests. But only one time with the residents where I had to weigh in on that decision because, again, it's computer generated. But this one, although computer generated, had to come to me because of the status of the person it was, because the person is a council member. That's not a very fun position to be in. But a council member can't get a benefit, can't get Restore, can't get those things. By the way, you'll see from the data how much Restore worked to do what it was supposed to do. By, again, a third party. Restore was never alone. Nobody on the staff ever said it was. That's a complete and utter mistruth out in the community that it's some kind of loan. I had someone call and say, I paid off my daughter's Restore part, do I get the money back now? You paid off what was owed. There was a grant part that helped the people who qualified lower their amount. The rest of it is what you owed amortized over time. We live in an area where there is a large amount of people who are hard pressed for any bills. They live on fixed income, there is poverty, there is a lack of education, or at least opportunities that have led to a higher wage and address of cost of living. Those are all problems. But if you look at the parish-wide, there's similar demographic problems with income, etc. And yet only in the city of Alexandria, there's data to support what I'm about to tell you, do you have these out of control non-payments. Everyone else is paying bills, their utility bills, or paying those utility bills. This is, again, like the non-rules in this chamber. It is the unfortunate situation that allowing bad practices there before has led to this problem. It didn't do anyone any favors. And now it's destroyed your bond rating. Destroyed it. I had A's the whole time. Now the same folks who are hurting, who need desperately infrastructure built, utility infrastructure, will have to go bond that out to do it. And you will be in a different world. So when people say, I researched something over the weekend, a council person perhaps, I researched this over the weekend, and here's the ordinance we need to pass. I'm gonna tinker with your utility. Please think about that before you pass that stuff. But you have the right to, you're the rate maker. But everything you do affects everything that you will need to do. Basic services. Water comments. I have not claimed, and those of you here on March the 14th know that we're not claiming there aren't water issues. We spent an inordinate amount of time explaining there are water issues. What I did state emphatically, because it's all I have, is I have no reported public safety threat with water, primary or secondary. I just don't have it. If it exists, give it to us. Fill out a form. I will trace it. And again, I offer this to the public and to the council. If there's an area that any council person thinks is making reports and somehow it's not getting somewhere, and the state too is in on a grand conspiracy to allow people to be harmed, we'll hire a third party and we'll let it be citizen. You say where. We'll pay for it. The city will. That's as big as we can do it. I don't know any other way to do it. I have brown water in my home. I had it yesterday. I've had it a lot lately, more than normal. I have not asked why. I'm sure I will, and we'll try to figure something out. But I have brown water. The idea, and I heard it, that only some parts of town have brown water, that is an utter mistruth. And anyone uttering it knows it to be. That's the kind of stuff, that's demagoguery, that's to get something untrue going. It's not true. As a matter of fact, it's far from true that it's in one area. We need to spend money to figure out some of those things, but one of the things we need to probably figure out is if we go and do it and it turns out it's on the side of the plumbing, if you will, of the resident, then what do you do? At what point does one taxpayer's subsidization of another's personal need to fix something become unfair? These are all things we have to weigh every day, guys. But we're going to get more to do on water. So I can't control what social media shapers choose to call reporting, but I've got to give you in these briefings authoritative opinions that come from research and my best known set of facts at the time. And I understand a fact. I understand a fact. It's different from an opinion. I've said it before, I'm going to say it one more time, because you're getting a lot of opinions that people are calling facts. I even noticed with my son and the kids today, someone will give a clear opinion on social media, and the other person follows up with, guess what, one word? Fact. And they love doing it. Like, you say an opinion on a football team and someone goes, fact. It's not a fact, that's an opinion. I've had to explain it to my son because it drives me a little bit bananas, but it's not. It's popular to say an opinion is fact. A 3-inch rain in an hour for the city in a low-lying area ain't a good thing. It's devastating. 3 inches in 1 hour in a low-lying area, Windermere, back at Martin Park, would be devastating in Alexandria. And so the 3 inches in 1 hour, we could establish, ladies and gentlemen, as a fact that it actually rained 3 inches in 1 hour in that area, could be established and measured, could it not? That's a fact. The same 3-inch rain in the field behind Martin Park, where a farmer needed rain for 3 weeks, and that rain happened, has the same fact that it rained 3 inches. Do you think their opinions might differ on whether that was a bad day or not? That's a fact, and that's an opinion. Same fact, 2 different opinions, both valid. Facts are, I can't get into your redistricting war, but there are facts about the data of what a district is and is not, and you need to find those facts and then form opinions from those. Cutting and pasting from a website a bunch of conclusions is not a fact. It's just a series of opinions that may be factually established in other cases, but it doesn't mean it applies to any one situation. I think that is such a serious issue that I am going to propose, and I hope you will back me up. I think I'm already I want to get a top demographer law firm to look at this. Does it change your vote? What you have to do, that's your business, but we're going to get to the bottom of this. Because there were big allegations made. Big conspiracies require big evidence. We're going to get to the bottom of it. And whatever the facts are, let them be. Let them be out. I want to be no part of any Section 2 violation. I've been told by counsel there's not. Mr. Goins, Mr. Gist, everybody who's worked on the demography of this, districts need to be compact to the extent you can, contiguous, and commonality of interest. That's the basic 3 rules, and then there's some sub-rules. I haven't looked at your district enough your final deal enough to see, but I've been told that here's how it complies and what it does. I can't weigh in on the opinion of what you should do on any other part of it. Whether you think it's fair and those kind of things, that's a different question than what the administration can do. We can certainly tell you what the demography says, and that ought to be a set of facts for you. But instead of it being the administration or you guys, because it seems that didn't work out too well, let's get a third party who that's all they do. I have some ideas about how to even select that so you can't face, remember, in a conspiracy, nothing will ever be enough, right? You get a third party, then the third party's tainted. Then you get a third party, look at the third party and umpire, they are too. It'll never end. You got to decide to cut stuff off, but let's find out some stuff about that and address it. I think it's important for the city of Alexandria, because if something is not right there, then it shouldn't occur. I think that yesterday did some irreparable damage for the near future for you, and I think that needs to get fixed. I'm going to save some of the comments about some of the rumors and things that we're dealing with, but I want to leave you on that train of thought with. I gave you my farmer fact story, the rain one. I gave you my kids one about Facebook facts. I thought this was an interesting one just to get people to think about it. This was a CNN view on the Royals war about poor Kate Middleton, who's now been diagnosed with cancer, but the media was quick to attack her before that moment. Now there's sympathy. There was no sympathy in the beginning. But this is a quote from a major newscaster. Wild speculation and rumors are being fueled by the failure to address them. What we've said now in our society is that if you fail to address lies, defamation, and innuendo, it's your fault. That's where we are. If you don't address it, you're saying it's true. If you don't address it, you're tacitly allowing it. I didn't grow up that way, and I don't believe that for a second. I believe the opposite. Grand conspiracies require grand evidence, but wild speculation and rumors are being fueled by the failure to address them. A little bit of a circle there. I told everybody I may come across a bit preachy today, and I apologize, but I think that some of this just has to be said. Comment forms, I need to know if there's interest from the council in doing it. I think it needs to be expressed in a resolution so that there's no doubt that there's a vote to ask us to do it. I don't think you need a third party on that one. I think we're perfectly capable of giving you something that anyone can see is an objective way to run it. Obviously, you'll have public comment on whether those public comment methods are right, and you can have that. There's just an easy way to do this that's better. The Alexandria Utility System Cure had its first meeting. It'll continue to. I went over that I don't control the utility bill collection. I don't order disconnects. I gave you the one time I had to deal with it. You have on your agenda an intergovernmental agreement, and that intergovernmental agreement involves us with the DA. I also have a document that I want to make available to you, our use policy on Generally, Article 7 agreements, how we do cooperative endeavors, an intergovernmental agreement is a cooperative endeavor that's between two government bodies. It must obviously comply with Article 7, meaning we can't give away things. There has to be a real exchange. The one with the DA is simple, so you know for your meeting. We have need for cross-commissioned assistant district attorneys to do work in the city, whether it's at city court, which can really affect DWI predicates, meaning they need to have the same, they need to be commissioned by DA Terrell to do some of that, and advise our officers on what I've promised you will be delivered at all times. Constitutional policing, they need help with reports, they need help in practice, primers of this is where the Fourth Amendment is today, this is a use of force continuum. It is a constant thing to develop with them. We've talked about it in other meetings here. This is just a continuation of that same process of good community and other policing. So we would like an assistant district attorney that can advise on Fourth Amendment issues, that's solely assigned to that, so there's no conflict. That's what they deal with police. They don't do any other civil stuff or things at the city. That's what that is asking you to approve. Ms. McGill's, what else would it involve other than what I was saying? Is that it?
That's pretty much it. Training and assistance and
Training
reports.
specifically.
He will be on call so that when our officers are out investigating a crime scene, they can call and ask whether they can enter the premises.
In case this isn't, Ms. McGill's isn't being picked up, I neglected that one. That's the main one. It allows you, and this is common, normal practice, allows you to have an assistant DA on call who could go out with us, and it allows us to cover some shared costs. Won't be all us, but it's only fair to share costs, to have that person captured to us when we want several days a week, but also to go out on call, give advice, entering buildings, all of those things. It's a great protection to these guys, and they want it. They don't mind that at all, because it covers them and lets them have real-time advice. So that's all that is on your agreement, on your agenda. Budget message preview, I'm going to issue a supplemental message in writing. I'll make it available online as well. It'll go a little more into the risks that we see in sales tax, and now that I know this stuff is coming about utilities, I'll probably get into what that means. A lot of the report, we're in sort of a legal exchange about it now before we make it totally public and bring everything to your attention. We're still battling some. There's some mistakes we believe they made that are serious that the prior administration started to at least address. But the more troubling aspect is it's all 100% them coming on our watch, and there's an admission throughout on the line, if you were linearly looking at it, that we have addressed and are addressing each, and yet this was rated just a few years ago one thing, and now we're seeing the real hook come now. So while it supports in some ways, if you want to be political, that it's sort of, I've been warning that this was going to be a problem, and these decisions have to be taken very seriously to run a utility. It doesn't really help to crow too much about you were right if we can't borrow the money we need to borrow to do the things we got to do. So not a whole lot to be excited about there on a political level. But if the idea was that things were done right the last 4 years and it's gone wrong now, let me tell you that's put to bed by a third party that